More retreads. Get it? Retreads?
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal. Sonny, you kissed my wife. Baby, my heart's on fire.
Once again, the 90s rears its ugly head and vomits all over us with the Combiner Wars Stunticon Generation 2 boxed set. These Stunticons have perhaps been repainted and remolded more than any of the other figures of the Combiner Wars line. First there was regular Menasor, then Optimus Maximus. There were figures that were retooled for Defensor. Then there were more repaints that were made for Optimus Maximus 2. Many of the figures were again remolded for Sky Rain. And now we have Menasor Generation 2 as well. The box is similar to the Generation 2 Superion set, with pictures of the vehicles on front, a splash page of Menasor himself, pictures of the robot modes on the sides, and also on the back, a picture of Generation 2 Menasor in his 90s painted glory. Ooh, how horny can one Decepticon get? The multilingual bio is in place. Menasor could be the ultimate weapon. Until the Stunticons can set aside their rivalries, he is best unleashed to demolish what he can in fits of fearsome but unfocused rage. Let us unbox Generation 2 Menasor and review him properly. A quick view of the box set out of its box shows that the figures come with their hand-foot accessories and all of the weapons that came with their Generation 1 styled selves. The set also comes with a collectible display poster for Menasor, sealed in a protective cardboard pouch, which I'm sure could stand all kinds of pounding, and a comprehensive instruction booklet. And here are the Generation 2 Stunticons out of box and in their vehicle modes. The figures are, of course, simple repaints of their Generation 1 style figures. There is little need to go over their features because none of them are any different. The only exception is that they ditched off-road, which nobody liked, in favor of including the so-called breakneck mold, which is a repaint of the Dead End figure with a new head sculpt. They all roll decently on a flat surface, even Lowrider Breakdown. Figure 1 on the list is Motormaster, who has been redone with dark blues and purples. He has the same weapon/gun accessories, and the same opaque windshield. He maintains the detailing on the front grille with the little Decepticon symbol, done in Generation 2 Play School style. Dragstrip is the one who actually looks the coolest with his recolored scheme, done over in sleek black with dark blue and purple highlighting. They didn't give him the checkered stripes on his sides like the 90s Generation 2 figure had, but they did put it onto the back of the rear spoiler. His seat is a rather bright yellow, which may or may not say something about the people driving him. Dead End now has a sort of deep red paint scheme, with a very large Stunticon symbol on the hood of his vehicle mode. The paint applications look fairly good, with silver highlighting on the windshields and the ugly 90s striping. Breakdown has a sort of tealish green color scheme to him now, with 94 Racing on the windshield. Very clever. 94, get it? 90s. The Stunticon symbol is on the front hood, with a sort of purpley trim and some silver highlighting. And some weird goldish colored glass on his windshields. Breakneck, aka Wild Rider, also has the Stunticon symbol painted on his hood and is done over in a bright mustard yellow with some sort of weird colored QR code on top. And lastly, there is Little Blackjack. Shares the same basic color scheme as Motormaster with blue and purple and a matching blue weapon. And you can sort of barely see his Stunticon symbol on the hood of his car. But as this is a Generation 2 set, it just wouldn't do unless I showed them in black light. As you can see, many of them do fluoresce fairly well under black light. Especially Dead End. Once you get it close, it really shows off that red. Wild Rider's mustard yellow will also fluoresce fairly well. The only ones who don't really glow all that well are Breakdown and Dragstrip, although he does have some plastic pieces that glow really bright. Motormaster and Blackjack fluoresce perhaps the best under this lighting. And here are the Generation 2 Stunticons in their robot modes. Their transformations are identical, and again each one of them shares the same basic level of articulation as all of the figures of the Combiner Wars line, with 360-degree rotating heads, ball-socketed shoulders, bicep swivels, bending at the elbow. Some of them have hands that flip in and out as part of their transformation. All of them have a waist swivel. They have ball-socketed thighs, a thigh swivel. They bend at the knee. Some of them have tilting feet, and some of them don't even have feet. Breakneck's color scheme suits him fairly well, with yellow and black highlights, silver trim, and blue thighs. The Stunticon symbol is highlighted in yellow on his chest. Dragstrip looks good in his robot mode, with his Stunticon symbol done in silver trim. He is black with silver and blue highlighting, and this ugly yellow combiner port on his chest. Dead End is done over in red and blue, with his Stunticon symbol stamped in silver and red on his chest. Breakdown's sort of greenish tinge and blue highlighting is carried over to his robot modes with not much color variation or detailing in the paint except for some silver trim on his feet and a silverish chest piece. They seem to have paid more attention to painting his gun sword accessory with a sort of magenta stripe highlighting on the top. Boss Motormaster has a sort of Skylynx thing going on with mainly blue coloring and red highlighting, and his Stunticon symbol on his chest, his blocky head. Overall, the plastic on all of these figures and the joints feels a little more solid and tight than they did on their Generation 1 versions, or even than the Generation 2 version of Superion. Perhaps they had a good batch of plastic with my figures, but I for one am glad that they don't feel loose and floppy like many of the other Combiner War figures do. And of course, Little Blackjack, whose color scheme is similar to Motormaster's except without the red highlights. His highlights are in black, which I don't object to in the slightest. Well, Death, that's all fine and dandy, you may be thinking, but how do these things look under black light? Ask and ye shall receive. As I predicted, the figures that looked good in vehicle mode under black light also look good in robot mode under black light, especially Dead End. Bright. And of course, Motormaster and Blackjack stand out like a beacon, leaving poor Breakdown to only have his glowing head and feet stand out along with his glowing crotch plate. And here is Generations 2 Menasor, combined and ready to take on the 1990s. Under black light, Menasaure's core glows quite well. The only limbs that stand out are breakneck and dead end. Somehow, with Blackjack installed, the proportions just don't seem quite right, with his big old boxy chest and his huge, long, spindly legs. Since the plastic is a bit more solid, the Generations 2 Menasor has more of a solid feel to it. However, some of the errors have carried over. No matter what they do, they can't get the Blackjack to stick inside his chest, which is probably just as well, because somehow the proportions just work better when you reclose the truck back and use that for his chest. This is the official version of Menasor's configuration, with the deluxes plugged into the areas where the instructions say to do so. However, with the Combiner Wars line, if you are displeased with the way that it looks, you can always swap them out to mix and match. For example, since Dead End and Wild Rider share the same mold, you may have both of them as legs or as arms to make it more symmetrical. I find this configuration more pleasing and symmetrical, with Dead End and Wild Rider as the arms beefy and thick, while Drag Strip and Breakdown can comprise the lower legs. This Menasor is just as posable as the Generation 1 styling. The Generation 1 version had a problem with the ratchet teeth on the hip joints, and it would always stand splay-legged unless you used a third-party gear swap. They seem to have fixed that with this version of Menasor, and he will stand with his legs straight. However, the third-party gears had twice as many ratchet teeth, which allowed for more posability with the legs, whereas this one, the ratchet teeth, can only allow you to splay the legs very wide, or hardly at all. The head will tilt back and forth and rotate 360 degrees. The combiner port at the arms will allow for 360-degree arm rotation. There is a double-jointed elbow, and the hand unit will swivel in their combiner pegs. The hips will swivel back and forwards and in and out, and the ratchet teeth are sturdy enough that the poses can be supported. However, like with most Combiner Wars figures, if you place the figure in any pose that puts the center of gravity off slightly, then the figure will topple over. The combiner ports will allow a knee rotation and a knee bend. The figure has a flappy cod piece which can extend up and down. Unlike other combiners, Menasor has waist rotation. If you examine the figure closely, you will see that the Menasor figure proportions are a bit off compared to other combiners. He has this huge boxy chest and a teeny tiny waist, which makes him look like a Transformer Barbie doll of sorts, unless the cod piece is flipped down. Cover your shame, Menasor. I had hoped to rerun clips from a cheesy 1990s Stunticons commercial. However, Hasbro simply did not love the Stunticons enough to give them much screen time. And so it falls to me, Death, master rapper and beatbox artist, to provide the Stunticons and Menasor with the funky 90s rap commercial that Hasbro never gave them. The Stunticons got it going on as they ride around on their wheels. They turn from radical robots to batical combiner, hypercolor Menasors extreme.
Oh yeah, I am the best rapper in the world, and you know it.
Some people use a trick to change Menasor's proportions so that he looks a little less gimpy at the waist. They extend his legs downwards by unhooking the leg tabs from here and extending the legs downwards to make the figure somewhat taller. For size comparison, here is Menasor next to Menasor. Here is Menasor next to Universe Inferno. And here is Menasor next to a lump of raw minerals. Menace Ore. Get it? Menace Ore. Or because... oh, never mind.
The pluses of the boxed Generation 2 Menasor set include the fact that they made some slight improvements to the solid nature of the figures. The joints are tighter, the color scheme is not bad, and the Stunticons themselves are cool figures in their own right. However, the figure does suffer from repaint-itis. And for that, the Generation 2 boxed Menasor set receives 7 deaths up. And now, because I know you can't get enough of it, let's have some more of my funky fresh raps.
If you refuse me, honey, you lose me. Then you'll be left alone, oh baby. Tell them all and tell me I'm your own.